watching Tesla. It's clearly a huge subject of conversation. It's having a terrible year, right? It's down over 30%. The latest numbers were disastrous, according to some of the analysts. Cory Johnson, chief market strategist, the Futurum Group, and Steve Wesley, founder managing partner of the Wesley Group, a former board member over at Tesla, both with us. So, Steve, I'll start with you. People love Tesla. They loved Elon Musk's vision. Is Tesla going to rise from the ashes like a phoenix, like a friend of mine said? I stole that. Is that what's going to happen, Steve Wesley, or not really?
Look, it's going to be tough. I'm more bullish about EVs than ever, but Tesla had a terrible quarter, and it's not a complete surprise because 3 of their major facilities in Berlin, they had arson. The plant was down for a week. No one saw that coming. China, they knew the plant was going to be down for 2 weeks for New Year's, and then you've got the plant in Fremont was down. Well, they did the refresh for the Model 3. But the big story here is the Cybertruck has been a flop so far. We'll see if they can fix that, and they're late on the $25,000 vehicle. That's what they need to do. But despite all the hardship, they still managed to produce more EVs than BYD last year, so give them credit for that. But I think this is going to be a choppy year. All eyes at Tesla have to be on how soon do they get that 25K vehicle into market, and how successful is it with consumers? We'll see.
And I'm not sure that the Cybertruck was ever supposed to be the moneymaker for the company. I think that was sort of the wow piece. But the cheaper model that they're working on now, and that's sort of one of the reasons they saw the weakness. You mentioned arson, you mentioned some disruptions in production, and also a change in focus to the cheaper model, the $25,000 model. Cory, do we see something great that could emerge from Tesla? Because everybody, so many of our bulls that come on are turning and saying, I don't know anymore.
Steve mentions the Fremont facility, and I was actually driving near there the other day and saw a Cybertruck ahead of me. And I texted a friend who's a car geek, and I said, what are the odds there's a woman driving that car? And she texted me back saying, close to zero, it's a bro car. And it really does speak to the limited market that the Cybertruck has. And it matters because of the resources the company put towards that. As Steve points out, rather than spend the time and resources and effort and the thoughts of the great mind of Elon Musk to devote those thoughts towards doing something that's going to grow in the market instead of something going to be really cool that he thinks is cool to look at. That's what the company has done instead of doing the thing that's going to help them out here. And I'll beg to differ with Steve out of great respect, but it is true. All the factories he mentioned were the difficulties that they had in the factories, and yet the overproduction. If you look at the numbers, they had over 40,000 more vehicles produced than sold. That's the biggest difference they've ever had between the production and the sales. And it really does suggest that they've exhausted, to some degree, the sales that they can achieve. They've hit some really big numbers here, bigger than anyone ever has in electric cars. But they've never been able to produce so much and sell so little by comparison.
Look, you know, there's the low-hanging fruit, the people who everybody was on board. I want a Tesla, I'm in. That's the low-hanging fruit. Those people all bought. You have stiff competition in China, and where they have a lot of subsidies and tax credits and ways for Chinese companies. And the idea here is that these Chinese companies, BYD goes back and forth with how many they produce versus Tesla. You know, the landscape has changed. Tesla's not the only player in town anymore. So the way for this to succeed would be more EV demand. That's what you need. And Steve, is that going to help Tesla? Is there going to be more EV demand for everything? We're not really hearing that from the likes of Ford and GM. They're focusing more on hybrids these days.
Look, there's absolutely going to be more EV demand for the rest of our lives. There's about 80 million cars sold globally a year. Last year, about 14 million were electric. That's a huge number. This year, it's heading to 18 million. That's going to be over 25%. That's an inflection point by any standard. So more EVs are going out. The question is, who's buying them and what happens when you have more competition in the market? And the reality is, Tesla has owned the US market. They've done pretty well in Europe, pretty well in China. The Chinese are now coming with a vengeance. BYD and a lot of firms most investors haven't even heard of, like Li Auto, Geely, have great cars. And what's going on here is BYD is basically just owning the sub-economy market. Right. That's basically 10,000 to 25,000. Tesla's got to get in that $25,000 market. I think they will. It's just a question of how long will it take.
Yeah. And Steve, I'll give you a second to think about this, but if you had one sentence to tell Elon right now, I'd like to know what you would say to him. Cory, what names do you think are best positioned? And by the way, I disagree with you, because I think that the Cybertruck, all you need is one soccer mom to say it's great, and then all the soccer moms will buy it. I've never
Find
been
me
a
that
minivan
soccer mom. I'm
person.
all for it.
Well, listen, I was never a minivan person because my kids would say, well, you're a soccer mom. I was like, yeah, but I like a monster truck with big wheels. Like, I couldn't be seen in a minivan. That was not my look. My look would be a Cybertruck. And I think there are a lot of moms out there who they go weightlifting and whatever. And I think moms are evolving into something cooler. And so I think that could happen. What are your best bets when it comes to EVs? Which ones do you think will lead in the race, Cory, quickly?
Well, I think looking away from Tesla is to Steve's point, right? There are a lot of electric cars being sold, electric vehicles being sold. And if you go out, if you take Tesla's results out of electric vehicle sales, you see that they're still rising by well over 30% in the last year. So there's terrific growth across the industry in electrics. Now, did Ford back off their production a little bit? Yeah, they have in the margin. But generally speaking, we see big growth in electric vehicles across the board. And all of the other companies are doing really well with it.
All right. And last but not least, Steve, what would you say to Elon Musk today?
Get the $25,000 car into the market as soon as possible. That's where every moment of energy should be spent. Dial down the controversy, get that car in market. That's going to determine the future of the company.
Great. Great to see you both. Cory Johnson, Steve Wesley, thank you. Great conversation.